Well, thanks everybody for joining us today to review BrightSign. They're the leader in digital signage. Today we have on the phone Chris Dennis, who's going to take us through the product assortment. We've been working with BrightSign for probably about 3 years now, and product's absolutely fantastic, and you'll find out why if you're new to BrightSign. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris, and we can get started.
Well, excellent. Thanks a lot for that introduction, Bill. I appreciate everybody taking the time to join us here today to learn about our approach to digital signage. I'm sure a lot of the people on the call here are either getting into to doing digital signage, or it's something that you guys have previously done before. Maybe some of you are familiar with us, maybe some of you aren't, but we'll just give you kind of the rundown of what makes us different and how you go ahead and slot yourself into a specific BrightSign device. As you can see on the screen here, there's 4 players, which represent our 4 major families of media players here at BrightSign, and these 4 players, these 4 lines of players, is really what kind of fundamentally puts us in a different business than most other digital signage companies. And I say that because we're completely in the hardware business. Most other digital signage companies are some sort of software as a service. You're going to be buying the use of a software platform on a monthly basis, typically for somewhere between $30 to on up to $90, $100 a month per endpoint. And then they may help you procure some sort of general purpose Windows player, or maybe a Chromebox or something like that. We take a whole different approach. So we outfit you with a digital media player that is solely for the purpose of deploying signage to it. These do have a CPU, and they're built to do all of the same things that a PC can do, but they're built to do it basically all day, every day, and they're really purpose-driven specifically for digital signage. Not only that, but our software program, BrightAuthor, is completely free. So you can go on our website and you can download that at any point. In addition to that, we do have some networking services and some enterprise solutions that are sort of our answer to the software as a service products out there. But the cost to use those is fairly nominal and fairly low. So with that said, I'll go ahead and scroll down here. At the end of the day, this stat right here is why we've been able to be spec'd into so many projects, and really why we've just eclipsed our millionth player sold in just over about 8 years of business here at BrightSign. Is the fact that simply these products do not go down. They don't fail. You can install one of these players and know that it's not going to it's not going to die out in the field on you. It's typically not going to skip. You're not going to get error messages or anything like that. It's a very reliable unit. I think the actual number is 0.16% failure rate. If you compare that to a PC that is generally used for digital signage, such as like an Intel NUC, you could expect a failure rate somewhere between about 3 and 10%. So it's quite a bit of difference there. And the reason for that being is the fact that these are not PCs. These are solid-state devices with no moving parts, completely fanless. They're built to be in hot and strenuous server rooms and outdoor cabinets for digital signage and things of that nature. They will not overheat. And the form factor, if anybody's familiar with our previous products, is much more thin and sleek looking and presentable than it used to be. And they're very small, so they can slide behind most any type of screen. Not only that, but as I mentioned, our software program is completely free, and we do have networking options that the costs are very low, and it's a very scalable product too. Anytime you need to add or remove products, you're just pulling out a piece of hardware. You can add or remove players to BrightSign Network or to or even just publishing locally over a local area network fairly easy, and there generally is not a lot of cost to do that. Here are just some of the awards that we've received over the years for development and the integration that we've done. We're working with probably about 25 or 30 of the other names in the digital signage industry because, as I said, we are a hardware company, and we really just try to be a vehicle for other people to be able to deploy whatever type of signage they want. And I'll go into that a little bit more later, but we do have quite a few partners that, if for whatever reason, and we'll go into some of those reasons later, that the BrightSign universe will not work seamlessly for you, there's plenty of other options that we can slot you into that can make life a little bit simple. Here are just a slide with some of the brands that we're working with. Some of these brands, we have tens of thousands of deployments with, GoPro being one of those, or Bose or Best Buy, Ford, or many of these retail stores. Brands at retail is probably where we have seen the most success, and really is because of our reliability. So a lot of those companies will mandate that if there is a certain failure rate, they will not use that product in their product refresh a year from their purchase date, because they just cannot experience any downtime in their stores. Because that's obviously it's very important to have signage and to advertise the things that they need to advertise when customers are there and on the floor. So. So after that brief introduction, we'll just go ahead and go down to the player capabilities and what each player actually has the ability to do. And as you're speaking with your customers, this is a great slide to keep, and I'll actually send this to Bill so all of you can have this and use this and have it up really when you're talking to your customers about digital signage. Because as you see here, under each product family, you're going to see a list of capabilities that each device has the ability to do, and as you ascend, you see that there are less and less buttons. But of course, you're not going to lose any functionality as you go up in model. You're only going to gain it. But as you can see, the reality is the LS423, a $250 retail device. You can do a lot of what your customers are going to need just using that entry-level basic player. The LS player used to just be a simple looping video content device. It's no longer the case. That device now has the ability to still loop video, but you can actually schedule content, and that content will run according to that schedule, or playlist, as we call it in the digital signage industry. But you can also do some integration of HTML. So if you want to point to a company web page, or maybe you'd like to display a weather widget at the top right or at the bottom or something like that, or maybe you want to have some live data like news or traffic or stock ticker information on your device. That's something that you can do with just a $250 basic LS player here. All of our devices are going to have the ability to do what's called zoning. And that's something that most platforms that you come across are going to have the ability to do, and ours is no different. And what that is just the ability to segment your screen into multiple different zones for you to drop different types of media or content within. Each zone actually has the ability to be controlled by its own playlist. So you can have each zone sort of run according to its own schedule. So, if you have particular content that needs to display in a certain zone at a certain time, that's something that you can schedule into the back end and publish to our player. And again, it's going to run according to that playlist until a new set of content is published to it. You even actually have the ability to synchronize zones together. So The playback of a video, let's say in one zone, could then theoretically trigger content playback in a different zone. So you could have the ending of a video then trigger the beginning of another video of maybe some sort of image scroller or even like an RSS feed or something like that in a different zone. So there's a lot of different options there, and every device will give you the ability to segment your screen and to drop different types of media into it. One of the most popular types of media that everybody asks about and wants to incorporate into their projects are live feeds of many different kinds. And RSS feeds and live data, social media integration, as I mentioned before, news or stock tickers, or ESPN. Everybody likes to have information like that, so you can check your fantasy teams and whatnot. That is all stuff that you can grab really for free out on the web. These are free assets that you can simply get from a CNN, an ESPN, whatever news outlet you prescribe to. Grab that RSS URL and then just simply drop it within a zone within our presentation. That's something that you can do fairly natively, and that's going to be allowable across all devices that we have. In addition to that, you can actually also create your own RSS feeds. That's something that you can do out on the web, and then obviously you can host it and drop it into the software as well. Or you can create what's called live text, and that's essentially just creating text fields within your presentation, and you can schedule different changes there, or if you're creating a menu board for your customer and you just want to change pricing or menu items really quick. Pop into the software, make your change, and there you go. That's it. And of course, you can incorporate social media like Facebook widgets, or a Twitter feed or something like that, or maybe a company wants to follow a specific hashtag. It's very easy to drop in. There is a Twitter tool actually built into BrightAuthor, but it's fairly easy to drop in different HTML widgets into BrightAuthor as well, and there's a few different ways of doing that. Many of our partners actually specialize in developing custom social media and news and weather widgets that you can purchase for a one-time fee and simply drop into BrightAuthor and display within the zone within your presentation. And then lastly, a lot of companies have third-party softwares programs that they just like to display the dashboard of. In the example here, you see a software program running flight times. We've heard a lot about sales offices here, or call centers just wanting to display live call statistics, or sales stats, so their sales team members know where they are throughout the day, or how many phone calls they still need to make. Many of those software programs, again, will have a URL or some sort of HTML code or something like that you can simply grab and then drop within a zone within your presentation, and then basically just mirror that information within a zone within your project. So there's a lot of options there as far as having live information, and using those can really help you keep content fresh without having to continuously produce new video or image content. One of the big variables in slotting yourself into a particular BrightSign device, well, there's really two, but the first one being, and especially because a lot of presentations are built this way these days, is HTML integration. So all of our players, as I said earlier, have the ability to display some sort of live web content. You want to display information on your company web page, or just any information that is out there on the live web. So the LS player has the ability to display that information in a single zone. But let's say you have a company that wants to display their company web page but they have another page, from in the example that I just went into. They have some software statistics that they want to display from their Salesforce dashboard. Well, that would be now two zones that are going to be pulling from the web in some form or fashion. So in most cases, you've really sort of exceeded the capability of that LS entry level player. So that's going to let you know that if I have more than a single zone that is pulling from the web in some form or fashion, then I probably need to slot myself up into a more robust device. So then I would just go up one family to the BrightSign HD family, which does have the ability, as you see here, to have multiple modular assets, HTML assets, running in your presentation simultaneously. So you could have those two assets. You could run that live web page and your software statistics alongside some sort of video content with that HD player. Now let's say that you wanted to have all of that, but then you also wanted to display, your Facebook page. Maybe you also wanted to display some sort of Twitter feed or a hashtag that you're following there, or you had a Flickr image scroll or image list or something like that you wanted to display. Again, you're just adding more and more zones that are going to be calling back to the web in some form. So you're going to need to have a robust device that's going to be able to pull that information in and display it without it skipping or maybe just not appearing the way that you would like, or maybe not appearing at all because you're just exceeding the CPU capability of that particular device. Well, in that situation, especially if you're going to have about 4 to 5 zones that are going to be calling back to the web, the XD or the XT player, one of the advanced or the enterprise level players, is really what you're going to want to go to, because those are the players that have that extremely strong HTML5 rendering engine that will allow you to display all those assets alongside some sort of locally hosted content like video or images, or really the list can go on and on and on. So as your customer is describing to you the type of environment or the type of content that they're trying to display here, just think about it in terms of that. Where is this? Where are these assets that they're talking about hosted? Are these live web assets, or are they describing video content to me? Are we talking about image content? And that will help you pick a specific device. And that leads me to video content here. That would be the second largest variable in helping pick the right device for any digital signage application. Basically, the ability to have 4K video content is only going to be native to the BrightSign XD or the XT device. So those devices are 4K players. If you're going to incorporate 4K images or 4K video, you're going to need to use one of those two. The HD and the LS player have the ability to display 1920 by 1080 video at 60 frames per second, but they cannot display 4K UHD video content or image content. And we also fully support H.265 and 264 on all of our players at this stage. So, even if you were using a 265 file that wasn't a 4K video file, you could still display that using the LS player. One of the things that's worth noting is that since video content is so popular these days, is that the XD and the XT also have what's called dual video decoding, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's just the ability to display video content in more than one zone, 2 zones simultaneously. And actually, the XT has the ability to display one full 4K video alongside one full HD video. So if video is going to be a major aspect of your project, or if you're working, with an ad agency or somebody in retail that just, would like to have high-resolution images or video content, then going with the XD or the XT device is going to be the device that you go ahead and spec for that project. Video walls are something that we receive a lot of calls for pretty much on a daily basis, and something that really in this industry you see quite a bit of these days, and they've become less and less expensive as the years have gone on. And really, in the BrightSign universe, they can be even less expensive than a lot of people are typically making in these days. So typically, with a video wall, you would basically have a BrightSign player or a PC fit into some sort of video wall processing unit that like an AMX or Crestron or a company like that would produce, and then that device can then scale out the content to your video wall array, no matter how many screens that you have within it. And that's something that you can certainly do with any BrightSign device, really. All of our devices would seamlessly work with that, and have the I/O ports and the interactivity and synchronization to go ahead and work with a device such as that. But what most people don't know is that that video wall processing unit isn't necessarily needed in most digital signage, in most video wall applications. Through the use of Bright Wall, or I'll bring it up in 1 minute, Auto Wall, or we have a third video wall workflow called just Enhanced Synchronization. You can create video walls just by following the same workflow that you would for any BrightSign digital signage presentation. Basically, just by having a single device per endpoint, so per screen, you're going to need to network those devices either by daisy chaining them together or just connecting them to the LAN that's at the building. And then once you've done that, you can basically enter in information into BrightAuthor or into the Bright Wall function within BrightAuthor about bezel width of the screens that you're working with, the size of the screen that you're working with, and of course the orientation of the screens that are in your video wall array. And then once you've entered that information and told BrightWall about your whole application there, then it can do its best job to go ahead and scale that content out to all your devices on its own. So through the use of BrightWall, which is really only for video wall presentations. You can, if you're building a Bright Wall, you can only be deploying video content to it, but that is why Auto Wall was developed. Oops, excuse me. And the enhanced sync will also allow for multiple different type of assets, but through both of those, you can, display HTML content, or you can display RSS feeds, or image content, news ticker. Really, the list goes on and on and on. And again, the workflow is going to be very similar. Just by having a device behind each of your endpoints and having them networked in some fashion, you can enter in the information that BrightAuthor needs to go ahead and figure out how those screens are synchronized, and then to synchronize out that content to each device in an effective manner on its own. Now, for applications that have weird aspect ratios, or maybe you're using bar displays or something like that, and the resolution is a little bit weird. Then in that situation, what you can also do is, if you have a video editor, or if somebody is providing you video content, you can have them actually carve those videos up, and then you can actually take those each one of those video files, and then just drop them into BrightAuthor, and then publish them individually to each screen within your video wall array. So that's just something to keep in mind, that video walls is something that you can do fairly easily using BrightSign players, and typically fairly expensively as well, if you wanted to avoid using some of that third-party hardware to do so. So as you see here, there's a lot of different types of content that you can deploy using BrightSign players. And I'm not going to go into every single type of content because frankly we could be here all day talking about everything that you can do with these devices. But it is just good to know that some of the basics. Such as what is going to slot you into a more robust device, and what devices can handle certain levels of HTML or video content, and what goes into making a device advanced or enterprise level. As we, in summary, what would make it advanced or enterprise level would be that video content, or the high level of HTML integration. Excuse me. Certainly using 4K content. And if any of your customers are asking, for enterprise typical enterprise level application needs such as PoE, Power over Ethernet, then that's something that is offered with the XT line here. And live TV is actually something you can also do with the XT line. You can do video over IP with essentially every device in the HD family or above. But what this particular device has is an HDMI in for you to simply take a cable box or a DirecTV box and just take the HDMI out from that and then pass through whatever channel or whatever feed you have on that device through a zone within a presentation that you've built within BrightAuthor using that XT1143. So, I guess in theory, it wouldn't even need to it wouldn't even really need to be live TV. Anything with an HDMI out, you could pass that feed through a particular zone within your project. So, any other specific project questions you have? Obviously, my phone lines are always open, and so is everybody here at the sales team with BrightSign. But once you've figured out, the type of content that you want to deploy to your signage, then the next thing to figure out is how you're actually going to do that. And the best way to do that is basically just to go to, BrightSign's website and look at the different networking solutions that we have. And if you work in digital signage often, then a lot of them are probably going to be fairly familiar to you. But as you can see here, the top three networking solutions that we have are completely free, and these are all done out of BrightAuthor as well. The first one at the top, just local micro SD publishing, that is just sort of the old-fashioned way of just taking content, or maybe you have a standalone application, or a customer of yours is taking it to a trade show. They're not going to have access to a network. Not a problem. Essentially, you can just take those presentation files, drop it onto your micro SD card, take that micro SD card and plug it into your BrightSign device, and when you plug the HDMI in and power that device on, it's just going to run your content according to the playlist or the schedule that you built. But you could also publish over a local area network, via a wired or wireless connection. We do have a wireless module here that you can purchase for any device. It's just an additional $50 retail. And you can just use the local area network that your customer is building already most likely has set up. And it's a fairly easy setup. The workflow for that is detailed many times in many different areas on all of our resource websites, such as support or our docs page. So we can walk you through that. And then lastly would be simple file networking, which is sort of a free way of doing remote updates using BrightAuthor. So what you can do is use an FTP or a file sharing site like a Dropbox, as long as that folder that you're using didn't require some sort of authentication, then you could host your presentation files in that web space, in that web folder, and then tell BrightAuthor to check back in with that folder. Tell your devices to check back in with that folder. Every 4 hours, twice a day, every hour, every 10 minutes, you're going to set, that time interval that it's going to check in with those folders. And if there's new presentation files to grab, then that player will grab it, upload it to the SD card that is installed within that unit, and then begin playing the presentation files that you dropped within that web space. So those are the three workflows that you can use to publish content out of BrightAuthor and over a local area network. But many of your customers are going to have multiple locations, or maybe they're just going to have certain needs that are going to call on the use of a BrightSign network, or maybe even an enterprise solution. So I'll just go ahead and scroll down to those now. Here we go. Here we go. Here it is. So BrightSign Network, for any customer of yours that has multiple locations, or maybe if they don't even have multiple locations, if they just have, typically about 10 signs or more, BrightSign Network is just going to make life a whole lot easier on them to publish content and to manage the players that they have within their network. So BrightSign Network is our cloud-based service. It basically allows you to deploy your content to devices that may or may not be within the same LAN that you're building content or building playlist on within BrightAuthor at the moment. It also frees you from hosting your own content as well. We would then host your content on our servers here. It is very secure. It's an Amazon web server, and we do have the security statements behind that if you or your customers would ever like to check that out. But it's a fairly easy service to use, and it's fairly scalable as well. So anytime you have BrightSign players in place, you can add BrightSign Network to them at any point. So if you decide today that you want to purchase BrightSign players and you start publishing within BrightAuthor, and your customer is just having a little bit of a tough time doing it, then they can always add BrightSign Network at any point. Some of the reasons that you would go ahead and add BrightSign Network are the fact that you can create groups of players within BrightSign Network, but then you can actually publish to those groups as well. Which is something that you can actually you can't actually do within BrightAuthor. So if you had a group of 10 displays and they're all in your customer's lunchroom, and they're all just going to be displaying the same menu content on a daily basis, out of BrightAuthor you'd have to select each individual player and publish that menu to each individual one. And of course that can get pretty cumbersome, and nobody wants to do that. Within BrightSign Network, you could just create a group that's called, lunchroom menu boards. Drop all of your 10 players in there, and then you can go ahead and publish that presentation to all of them in one fell swoop. So just right there, it just makes it a whole lot simpler. And certainly if you have, as I mentioned earlier, players at multiple different remote locations, this is going to give you the ability to consolidate all of those into one platform. So you're going to have the ability to access each one of those players and publish content to them from any remote location in the world, really. Because you're just going to log into BrightSignNetwork.com using your username and password, and then all of your players will be accessible from there. Not only can you publish to all of your players there, but you'll also be able to have viewership into what your players are doing at any point in time. So if you want to confirm that a presentation of yours at a certain location is in fact running a presentation that's very important, You're supposed to be a customer is supposed to be welcoming a client to a certain location of theirs, or they're hosting some sort of event, and you want to confirm that the content that you publish to those devices is in fact running. There are tools within BrightSign Networks called remote snapshot, or remote view, which is taking a literal snapshot or a video clip of a moment in time, or at this current moment, of exactly what is displaying on a particular screen within your network at any point in time. BrightSign Networks is actually also going to give you additional publishing capabilities as well. So it's going to come with the ability to build what's called dynamic playlists and tag playlists. And for anybody that's trying to keep their content fresh on a regular basis, dynamic playlists and tag playlists is going to make life a whole lot easier on them. So essentially, with dynamic playlists, you can create a folder in which you can just simply drop new media files in or pull new media files out, such as images or videos, without actually having to change any of the aspects of the presentation that you built in BrightAuthor. So once you publish a presentation and you tell BrightAuthor that a large zone within your presentation is always going to run video content, and you publish that to your device, typically you'd have to go into BrightAuthor and drop in your new video files and then publish that out to your player again in order to keep that content fresh. With dynamic playlists and I guess to an extent also with tag playlists, you wouldn't need to do that. Essentially, you could just go to your dynamic playlist folder and pull out the video files that you previously had in there, drop in the new video files that you'd like to display now, and then now those zones will display that information. In addition to that, dynamic playlists will actually also give you the ability to stack playlists on top of each other. So a lot of your customers will have a schedule of events that they know are going to happen, up to a year in advance, let's say. Some companies will even have a schedule of events that will even date back out farther than that. So what they can do and what they're typically going to want to do is to build their playlist and their content, in advance and publish that to their devices, so they're not having to go back in and make changes on a daily basis. So their signage kind of works autonomously. And dynamic playlists will give them the ability to do that. But when other events do inevitably come up, they don't have to go in and change their main presentation or their main playlist entirely. They can basically build a secondary playlist that they can stack on top of their main playlist that the program will know to dynamically interrupt the main one and go to the dynamic playlist. And once that's concluded, dynamically know to go back to the main playlist that they had previously published. So it does make the management of content a whole lot easier. And for companies that do have plenty of events and have customers visiting them that they may not have planned for, it makes it a whole lot simpler to keep that content fresh without making a whole lot of changes that you may regret. And then lastly, you can perform network administrative functions and assign different user roles and then give specific permissions based on those roles. And there's pre-built roles within the platform, but you can also edit them as well to add or remove functionality based on that person's understanding of the CMS. The administrator will basically have access to every single player and every single type of content that you can access. But you can also have certain roles that will only have the ability to edit image content, or maybe you only want them to access the displays in your end user's conference rooms, but you don't want them to access the displays in the lobby. Those are stipulations you can make on the back end, and by assigning them a specific role or giving the role that you've given them a specific permission. And then lastly, just Bright Plates will come with BrightSign Network. And what that is it's a fairly easy to use template-based sign creation tool in which we give you a bunch of pre-made digital signage templates where the zones are already sized and built for you. So essentially, if you have a customer that is going to have their marketing team or an office manager or HR or something like that update their content, they don't have to learn, the ins and outs of BrightAuthor in order to keep their content fresh and to keep it professional looking. They could simply use a template that they created and then share it amongst their BrightSign network or BrightPlates network or one of our pre-built ones, and then they can change the background color, drop in new image or video content, and then simply publish it out from that platform. And again, that's included in the cost of BrightSign Network, or you can buy that as a standalone service for $49 a year. So really, that's it as far as the type of content that you can deploy using our platform, which is basically every type of content that you can name, and then how you go about deploying that is I guess sort of the BrightSign 101. And there's a lot of different things that we could go into, as I said before. But the main thing to keep in mind is that we obviously do have a sales team here that you guys can call at any point if you do have questions. We also have a full-service support team here that is available pretty much around the clock with the amount of staff that we have on it now, and they're answering tickets faster than they ever have. And we also have a lot of resource websites that can teach you a lot of the information that we've covered in this webinar and beyond. We have a docs page that is essentially a wiki for everything BrightSign, and we also have a support page that answers a lot of questions and is basically going to cover any support issue that anybody has ever encountered since BrightSign's inception. So yes, it's just a good idea to keep the dialogue open. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. But I see that I am about 5 minutes over my time now, so I will yield the floor. Bill, is there any questions that anybody has at this point?
Yeah. So thanks for going through that, Chris. It was great. So questions come up. What does the BrightSign network cost monthly or annually?
So it is only an annual fee. That's $99 retail per year.
Okay, and that's per device or per project?
And that is also per device.
Got it. Okay. And another question was, will this recording, the webinar, be made available?
Per device? Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Will the recording be made available to you? Yes. Please go to our YouTube channel, and it was in the original invite. There's a link to it. Please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe while you're there. New content's being added weekly. Any other questions? If at this point, if you would like to, please feel free to unmute yourself, and if you want to ask the question live, or if you want to type it into the chat box, I'll be happy to read it out, read it for you. While we're waiting for that, I just also want to remind everybody that this session qualifies for CEDIA CEU credits, and if you are a CEDIA member and you're looking for ways to maintain your accreditations, these sessions do count for 1/2 of a CEU credit, so please make sure that you petition for that. All right, well, Chris and I will hang out for a minute, and again, please feel free to unmute yourself or to type it into the chat window. Here's a question that came in. Are there any devices that have a VGA port?
That have a VGA? No, none of them have a VGA port. Basically every other type of port that you would need, they're either in the basic players or the expanded I/O players, which are interactive. They'll have most of the ports you need, but if you have a VGA, I guess the best thing to do there would just be to buy an HDMI to VGA converter or something like that, which I'm sure AllNet could probably help you out with, I would assume.
We can. If you guys need something like that, we can offer it. As part of the commercial mix that we offer too, I just want to remind everybody that we have access to a wide range of commercial flat panels. We have all the Sony commercial flat panels available. We have all the Samsung commercial flat panels available to us, as well as a full assortment of front projection options from Sony and Vivitek for
Great.
commercial applications. So.
And Bill, do you guys do interactive screens there at AllNet as well?
We have access to some interactive screens through Vivitek, but it's not something we assort currently. But if you have specific applications, guys, we're more than happy to work with you and make that happen.
Great. Yeah, and that's something that I also I failed to mention. Interactivity is something that we can do fairly easy as well. Not only just touch screens, that's what most people think of when you say interactivity, but BrightSign also sells button boards, so that's another different type of interactive trigger, or IR remote controls, motion sensors. Really, the list goes on and on and on, and those are all different projects that are probably easier than you think to build. So, again, just other things to kick around.
Okay, great.
Any other questions at this stage?
Let's see here. Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Well, with that, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause the recording now.
Okay.
And I want to thank everybody for joining us